On today's show, NBA play-in tournament action continues. Tyler Herro drops 38 as the Heat blow out the Bulls. The Mavs dominate the Kings. And which of the four play-in teams left has the most upset potential? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Joining me is my partner in crime, host of Locked On Heat, David Ramil. David, we saw two play-in tournament games. What did you see in these two play-in tournament games?
Not a lot of competitive basketball, but still some good moments here. Sandwiched in between some not so great moments. But you know what? Hey, that's play-in tournament basketball, baby. You got to love it.
You know what it was? It was like this. Where we go?
Like two ugly girls fight. Nobody cares who wins.
Had to get a drop in there. All right. We appreciate you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off of your first purchase. We're going to go out to the first game of the night here. Miami Heat get the blowout win against the Chicago Bulls. Let's check in with Locked On Bulls first before we let David wax poetic about Tyler Herro's fantastic performance in this game.
For those of you not in Chicago, this is JJ's. This is where you go after the Bulls lose. The Chicago Bulls take another L yet again off a Miami Heat unexplainable amazing coaching performance from Erik Spoelstra. Billy Donovan just didn't have his best stuff yet again in another play-in situation. Kobe White looked horrible the entire game. Josh Giddey showing up, Miles Buzelis giving his all. Nikola Vucevic, a lot of question marks on his performance, but I think here's the bottom line. When it comes to the postseason, the Chicago Bulls did not get the job done. When it comes to the postseason, the Chicago Bulls effectively can't figure out the Miami Heat, and that's where we are right now. And it seems like it's where we're going to be for the foreseeable future with Billy Donovan and AK at the helm. We'll see what happens. We covered it all on Locked On Bulls tonight. Stay tuned in with us. My order's ready. See Red Nation. Stand up.
For those of you wondering what Pat actually ordered, he got a 6-piece fried hard with fries and a pizza for his wife. So I had to inquire about what the recovery order was from JJ's. All right, David. Tyler Herro was sensational in this game. He was perfect at halftime. He had 23, 3 and 3 at the half on perfect shooting splits, 100% across the board. Finished the night 38 points, 13 of 19 shooting, 3 of 7 from deep, 9 of 10 at the free throw line. How was he able to be so effective in this game?
I don't think it was anything that he had done differently. And I think that tonight's game was more of a kind of a coming out party on a national level, because this is kind of the culmination of what he's been building slowly over the course of the year. Obviously the All-Star selection, but he's been improving in lots of different ways in terms of his shot selection, how he draws contact, his ability to absorb contact, the poise of which he showed in the play-in tournament has been something that's been steadily growing over the course of the season. And I think he's just gotten better and better in terms of finding his shots. He's not the most athletic. He has obvious physical limitations, and those are going to dog him throughout his career. And yet he doesn't let those hinder him as they have in the past, because now he's at a point where I think he's gotten a little physically stronger. He's not exactly going to overpower you, but he knows how to use what strength he does have, what quickness he does have, to be able to find his spots on the floor and to be able to knock down those shots. And I think they did a really good job of setting a lot of screens, whether it was Bam Adebayo or Khalil Ware or anybody else, just getting him the kind of space he needs in order to be able to create just a little bit of space in order for him to get his shot off. Plus, he had that floater game going, and his floater has been sensational. It's a part of his repertoire that has to be respected. And once he gets into the painted area, it's almost automatic once he lets it fly. And so I think that's a big part of it. But I was really impressed with his ability to make plays for others, but also get to the free throw line. You lose Jimmy Butler, a guy who lives and dies at the free throw line, and then you have to replace him with Tyler Herro. That wasn't exactly something that screamed a huge success, but Tyler has gotten better at drawing fouls, and he went 9 of 10 tonight. That was a really impressive showing from him.
You know, who else routinely impresses me when I watch Miami is Davon Mitchell, right? Like he came into the NBA known for his defense. You're shaking your head. Do you agree, or is this a disagreement?
Oh, absolutely.
Fully agree. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fully aboard the Mitchell train.
Okay, good. All right. Just because, like, when you come in, you get these guys who are just absolute dogs on defense, and sometimes they're never able to really put it together offensively. But it really feels like Davon Mitchell's the guy that he's put in so much work and really refined his offensive game to get to a place where I think it's fair to say he's a plus offensively in this game. 15 points, 5 of 5, perfect from the floor, hit both his threes, went 3 of 4 at the free throw line. Can very much get his own at times offensively, right? Never going to be a guy that you want to run the offense through or let handle the offensive workload for, an extended period of time throughout a game. But to go from being, earlier in his career, kind of like, not a black hole on offense or not like, playing 4-on-5 kind of thing, but just to have the offensive limitations that he had as a player once before and to evolve to where he is now is really great to see for his kind of career trajectory.
Absolutely. We were fortunate enough to have him on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke to his evolution and his growth and everything else like that. Definitely a great episode for anybody interested in Mitchell and his perspective on things from the Heat and everything else, and also just his own trajectory and his growth as a defender. And just one of the things that he spoke about in Miami as he had nothing but praise for Erik Spoelstra, allowing him to be who he is and helping him and kind of just continuing to guide him, something that he was missing in Sacramento or Toronto, where he was kind of more of an afterthought than anything else. And look, that's a lot of that's a byproduct of being a high lottery pick, the expectations that come with it. And then all of a sudden, if you don't meet those expectations, you're kind of buried as you're trying to find your place in the hierarchy of within the context of every team that you play for. But in Miami, it's been pretty clear, and he understands exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's given the freedom to go and do it. And his shooting numbers have been sensational. He's shooting almost like 50% from 3 since he joined the Heat. That's ridiculous. Like, I don't know if that's something that's sustainable. Probably not. But he's shown major growth in that regard. And you talked about his ability to get his shot going. Like, his speed was something that I wasn't really that familiar with. But he does have that quickness. The first step is there. He can get to his spots. He finishes at the rim at a really high level, something that Miami doesn't have with any kind of regularity. But he's really been great. And his defense was just incredible. There was that one possession late in the game where he tells Tyler Herro to get off his assignment of picking up Kobe White. He picks him up and then shuts him down for the entirety of that shot clock. It was a shot clock violation and a crucial turnover at a much needed point in the game. So he was great. He's been sensational for Miami, a hell of a pickup, and something, again, that you trade a star like Jimmy Butler and you don't know what you're going to get in return. But I think all the players that Miami got, whether it was Mitchell or Andrew Wiggins or even Kyle Anderson, all of them had a big impact in tonight's game.
All guys that have, some value across the board,
yes,
on an NBA roster. Absolutely. On the Bulls side of things, Pat mentioned it. You mentioned it just now, right? Kobe White really struggling in this game, just 17 points on 20 shots, 5 of 20 shooting in this one. Josh Giddey leading the way for the Bulls, 25 points, 10 rebounds, just 4 assists. So you kind of expect a little bit more playmaking from Giddey, although the Bulls were really struggling to knock down their shots in this game, just 27% overall from 3. They didn't get like anything off their bench, just 13 bench points, 9 of them coming from Taylor Horton Tucker. If you're the Bulls, David, how do you go from being Chicago and sweeping the season series against Miami in the regular season to then struggling this badly in the play-in game?
I think Erik Spoelstra did a really good job in terms of his defensive scheme. And one of the things that I liked that were different than other previous matchups was having Bam Adebayo on Josh Giddey. And now you might not see it based on the final point turnover or point turnout, but at the same time, those 4 assists, I think a big part of that was, as you mentioned, other guys not knocking down shots, but they just made those passing lanes that much more difficult. Like Bam, as an excellent defender, was able to create this obstacle, and Giddey had burnt Miami. Like, his shooting numbers were ridiculous. As good as he was tonight, or at least from his own point scoring perspective, he's been far better than that in previous matchups against Miami. And as a playmaker, though, he was limited. And I think that's a big part of it, was just being able to shut him down and kind of relying on other guys to beat you. And Miami's defense would just ratchet it up to a huge level, something that we hadn't seen from them in previous matchups against Chicago, that just threw everything off. Bazelis had been for Chicago against Miami. That wasn't the case today. Vucevic was limited, and Kobe White, you kind of just put the ball in his hands and hope for the best, and it turned out pretty well for Miami because, well, he just hasn't had a shot for whatever reason. He just has not been able to score with any kind of regularity against the Heat, and you have to credit guys like Mitchell, even Herro to some degree, and Andrew Wiggins, who all stepped up on the defensive end.
Coming up, defense wins championships for the Dallas Mavericks. Well, we don't know about that quite just yet, but it does win play-in tournament games. The Mavs dominating the Kings on their own home court. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Skims. Look, when I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I'll admit I was intrigued. I've heard about their quality from friends and family and my significant other, so had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it absolutely lives up to the hype. The worst thing about underwear, right, is over time, it gets a little ratty, right? It starts fading or it starts losing its shape, its form. Doesn't happen with Skims. You know, their men's line offers something for everyone from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. My personal favorite, the Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. Tried them out, and I'm not going back to the boxers that I used to wear. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with me. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day long. Whether you're working out or running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear that I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're not wearing anything at all. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA in Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Look, there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I use Game Time for last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, everything happening near you. Plus, their all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. They don't try to price gouge you at the end or surprise you on your way to checkout. You see exactly what you're going to pay throughout the process. They're fully transparent. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night, we appreciate you for making Game Night your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out David over at Locked On Heat. Come see me over at Locked On Rockets, or go find the Locked On Show for your favorite team. Let's get out to our next play-in game of the evening. The Dallas Mavericks dominating the Sacramento Kings. Let's go out to Locked On Mavs with a surprise cameo appearance for the recap on this one.
Dallas Mavericks get a win in the play-in game, and everybody, at least here, is happy about it, including...
Well, have a great summer, everybody. Cancun on 3. 1, 2, 3. Go Kings, I'm at it.
The Mavs will head to Memphis now, and they will play the next game in the play-in. This game was won by Anthony Davis being the best player on the floor. Defensively, he was awesome. He settled for a lot of jumpers, so his shots aren't going to look that good, his field goal percentage, but he was awesome in a bunch of other facets of the game. Brandon Williams, massive for the Mavericks. The best $47,000 ever spent in the NBA, maybe. They signed him for the last couple of games he's able to play, and he was great. He outplayed Zach LaVine for most of this game, which was wild, and Klay Thompson got his redemption. Remember last season, he went 0 of 10 from 3 in the play-in game for the Warriors against this Kings team in this same building. He got his redemption tonight in that second quarter. 16 points. It was absolutely fantastic. Great game for the Mavericks, doing things that we hadn't really seen them do. 10 threes in the first half. The Mavs have not really created or generated threes that much, but this Kings team allows a lot of them, and so that was big in this Mavs defense. Somebody recently said many times that defense wins championships, and I don't know about that for this team, but at least won them a playing game.
It did win them a playing game. But you know what, David? My favorite part about this playing game was we got to see the Bulls lose twice in one night, somehow, with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine getting dusted in this one. No, look, on the Mavericks side of things, to Nick's point, AD was awesome in this game. And I know he's given AD a lot of credit for the defensive intensity, but I'm not gonna sit here and become a Nico Harrison apologist. Not doing that whatsoever. But you do see a little bit of like the vision, right? With AD at the 4, Lively and Gafford at the 5, the size that Mavericks lineup has, how imposing they are defensively. Now, how much of that when when you're watching this game, David, do you chalk up to, okay, this Mavs defense feels like it has a chance to be legit, right? With AD, with Lively, with Gafford, with the size, the guys on the wings that they have, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, Klay Thompson to a lesser degree, right? How much of that do you chalk up to the Mavs defense has a chance to be really legit and carry them, as far as they're going to be able to go in the next play-in game or potentially down the line if they make it as the 8th seed and into next season, versus Kings offense is just not that great? What do you think it was more of in this game?
I'd say tonight it was more of the Dallas Mavericks just playing at a higher level defensively, but there's certainly elements of Sacramento kind of offense just throwing up all over itself, and I think that was pretty evident tonight. I see the vision. I think it makes sense, but there's question marks also because once you have Kyrie Irving on the floor, like, does that defensive mentality still translate? Do you have to compensate for his lack of defensive ability and things of that sort? Is it still going to be able to have the same kind of impact that we saw in tonight's game? I'm not so certain. And that being the case, kind of pokes holes in that argument that defense might win championships or anything like that, because you still have a player.
Hey, at least it wins play-in games. It wins play-in games. Okay. That much we can subscribe to so far.
Yes. It also apparently gets your general manager fired as we're recording this. Not so if you saw the news or not, but Sacramento Kings mutually parting ways with Monty McNair after 5 seasons, apparently. Not quite satisfied with the outcome of tonight's play-in game. So that's breaking news for you as we're recording this.
I thought you were, we're going to touch on that here in a second. I thought you were going to tell me that Nico Harrison got fired as we were recording this. That's what I thought you were leading into when you were like, well, defense. Oh man, I was ready for the whole world to come crumbling down and for Mavs fans to be rejoicing everywhere for the fire Nico chance.
2 wins in one night for sure.
Oh man. Hang on, you gotta carry the show for a second. I'm dying over here.
Yeah. I can't believe you got rattled there. But anyway, look, Sacramento, I think part of, if you're looking at things that went wrong for Sacramento, I think you have to start with Domantas Sabonis. I know he's been battling injury. I know it's not exactly been his best season as a pro, but just 11 points and 5 of 13 shooting. You're supposed to be the star. You're supposed to be the guy who carries this team. You bring in DeRozan, even at his stage in his career, he shouldn't be leading the team with 33 points on the night. That shouldn't be the case. Sabonis has to find a way to step up, and it's clear that Dallas's defense challenged him, but there were looks there that he should have been able to capitalize, and it just looked like he was a shell of himself for whatever reason. He just withered in the moment. And I know that, again, there are extenuating factors there, but at the same time, you've got to find a way to play at a higher level. If you're in a do or die situation at home, everything there was working out for them. I don't understand. There were so many different factors. They should have been the clear victor here, but yet that was not the case. And I think a lot of that falls unfortunately on Sabonis' shoulders.
No, look, I fully agree with you there. And I'm glad you brought up the Sabonis angle. It's something I wanted to touch base on for sure. I think Sabonis is as good as he is. I think I don't want to say he's overrated, but he's just a severely limited player. He's great in certain regards, right? He's an incredible screening presence. He's an elite rebounding force, but he's just a very limited offensive player. He doesn't have much to his offensive game outside of just being a great screener, rolling hard, cleaning up around the rim. He doesn't really have an offensive bag. That's why you cannot build an offense around Domantas Sabonis. You can't. The way the Kings built their offense around Sabonis previously was they used him as a screener, right? And they used the leverage of, him with De'Aaron Fox and all those little kind of elbow actions, pistol formations and stuff to be able to, kind of be the baseline of their offense. And you can mirror some of that with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine and all that. But Sabonis himself is not a guy that you can just give the ball to and say, go get us points, right? Post up and go do this and give us, 20, 25 and 10 or 15. He's not that guy. And unfortunately, if you're not that guy, you can't be the best player on a team. You can't. He is a great supporting piece. He can be a great, maybe second best player or third best player. But this is now, we saw him get exposed against Golden State, right? A couple seasons ago. And to have this game, a really disappointing performance in front of your home crowd against a Dallas Mavericks team that, honestly had no business winning this game. It was an embarrassing performance from Domantas Sabonis. But one guy that I wanted to make sure that we highlighted here is Brandon Williams, who,
yes,
to Nick's point, he said that AD was the Mavs' best player. I might have to disagree with it because AD was good and had a huge impact defensively. But Brandon Williams comes in off the bench and was a plus 24 in 18 minutes of run, had 17 points, was 5 of 8 from the floor, hit 3 3-pointers, perfect at the line, 4 of 4 there, and had 5 dimes, 0 turnovers, had great control over the game. And for a Mavs team that doesn't really have like a go-to playmaker, like their go-to guard, right? That's supposed to be Kyrie Irving. Right. He delivered in a big way in this game.
Yeah, I thought he was sensational. Really, and I'm glad you brought that out because while AD was the more consistent presence and had bigger numbers, like Williams in his limited playing time felt more impactful. Like when there were moments there where maybe Sacramento was trying to not necessarily cut that gap because they really never got to all that particularly close. But when you needed a bucket, just to kind of remind them or just kind of to put your foot down on the neck, Williams was the one who really stepped up, whether it was 1-3 or in one back-to-back possessions. He had 2 threes in a row. Like those shots were huge. He was sensational. He's got this great step. I mean, he looks like a hell of a scorer. He just looks really good. And I think the broadcast brought up a good point that he got a lot of opportunity over the last month because of injuries where he had previously been buried in the depth chart. And then he gets more comfortable. His scoring averages go up and he looks like just much more of a comfortable, fluid player out there, and he provided a hell of a spark for Dallas tonight.
Coming up, what's next for the Sacramento Kings? They fired Monty McNair. We'll talk about that really quickly, as well as which of the remaining play-in teams has the most upset potential. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. So many different games that you can get your hands on as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. The quality is smooth. You can play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your favorite games on the go wherever you're going. You've also got 4K streaming. You can watch more than 1.5 different million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. Head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day. All right, David, we got the breaking news there in our last segment. We figured we would touch base on it really quickly before getting to our scheduled programming here. Monty McNair fired for the disappointing season that the Sacramento Kings had, ousted from the play-in tournament here by the Dallas Mavericks. If you're the Kings, though, like, what direction? Where do you go from here, right? So you move on from Monty McNair, so they're going to be looking for a new GM. But what's the direction of the Kings franchise now? Like they kind of feel like they're just stuck in the worst place you could possibly be, which is NBA purgatory, right? They got rid of their star play, they got rid of De'Aaron Fox, they've still got Sabonis, they've still got like a kind of an interesting cadre of players, but nothing that gives you even a remote inkling that they could be, make any kind of noise in what is an absolutely loaded Western Conference.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck. I don't think there's any doubt. And without a draft pick either, there's just nothing there in terms of being able to upgrade their roster in some kind of sharp, pronounced way. But at least this might be an opportunity to get the kind of reset that you have not had in a while. I mean, they went all in. It didn't work out. They thought they were going to be much more competitive, but now you kind of have, at least from the front office perspective, you have a general manager who can come in, and as long as they have a clear vision and a proven track record, and I think that's essential. You bring in your coach now. I think that's the whole another aspect of it is that I don't think they'll retain Doug Christie. I don't think he'll keep this job beyond the interim post that he held this year. But now you have your guy, your coach, who you feel comfortable with in terms of leading this next era of Kings basketball. And then once you have a shared vision, I think that provides the kind of guidance that you need for carving out a clear identity. And then from there, it's kind of just paring things down. It's kind of like taking a block of marble and freeing it in order to sculpt the shape that you identify out of that block of marble. And I think that's kind of where you have to go, is like you have to look at this roster and say, you know what, it's clearly imperfect, but let's take it and mold what we can. Sabonis isn't the guy. I think we established that in the previous segment. Do you want to keep DeRozan? Like, is there any point in doing so? Is LaVine a guy that you can continue to build around and pairing him with Sabonis? Probably not. Like, what are the kind of upgrades that you need to make to this roster to make them more competitive? I think they're going to be a mediocre team for the foreseeable future. I could see a couple seasons more of mediocrity until they kind of figure it out, because it just seems like they're stuck with this roster. I can't see them making major changes, but to make minor changes over the course of the next couple of years will eventually get you to a better place.
You know, it feels like the Kings are, I joked about it in segment 2. They are the new Bulls, because the Bulls were in this spot. They had a middling roster that was going to flirt with the play-in tournament each and every season and be too good to be in the lottery, but not bad enough to be like a true tanking team, and just ultimately be on the mediocrity treadmill, which is the absolute worst place to be if you're an NBA team. Like, if you're losing games, if you're bad, at least you have a shot at a top 5 pick, and maybe you get a star in the draft who saves your franchise. Or if you're competing for titles and you're like an upper tier playoff team, that's a fun place to be as well. You get to experience real postseason basketball, not these one-off playing games where you get blown out by a bad Mavericks team, like all that stuff, right? So now they're going to be in this position where I feel like you need to figure out, you know, what can you get? Can you offload Sabonis? Can you offload DeRozan? Can you, even if you only get back 50 cents on the dollar for some of these pieces, right? You need to hit the reset button. And it kind of felt like the Bulls were hitting the reset button, and then they went on the win streak earlier, you know, late in the season, in March, when nobody really cares about the games that they're playing anyways, and they convinced themselves that they were capable of making some noise, and here we are with the Bulls getting eliminated in the play-in once again. So the Bulls also still have to figure themselves out. But let's talk about these 4 remaining teams really quickly, David. We've got the Miami Heat and Atlanta Hawks. They're set to square off. The Mavs are set to face off against the Memphis Grizzlies. We don't know. We're going to leave the preview of these 2 games to our next game night show. Jake Madison, John Corrales, they're going to give you a full breakdown on what to expect from those games and those teams. But of these remaining teams, who do you think has the most like upset potential? Like, of these 4 remaining teams, which one of them, if they get to that 8 spot, do you think has a legit chance to take some games off, or at least make the Thunder or make the Cavs sweat in a series?
Kind of putting me in a spot here, because obviously until we have the kind of clarity of which teams are going to be eliminated, it kind of discounts or sees too far ahead. Like, my tendency, and I know that people are going to accuse me of being a homer, is to say that Miami might have some upset potential. I really don't think
they've done it before. Right? They've broken out of the play-in tournament and upset teams before. So
it's but that was a combination of things. One, you had Jimmy Butler. We saw what he did for Golden State. We saw what he did against Memphis. Like, that's probably the expectation that you might have if going up against even a superior opponent, or what might be in terms of a record, a superior opponent. And you also have Erik Spoelstra. Right now you don't have Jimmy Butler, but you still have Spo. And given that, I think he can game plan things to such a high level that I think you can capitalize on Cleveland perhaps being a little rusty after their time off. I know you tend to think, oh, we time off, that's needed. You want to rest up players, but it also creates some rust. In the meantime, Miami will have, if they advance past Atlanta, and that's a huge caveat here, I think you give Spo that kind of time, and he can start finding a way to game plan against the Cavs. They've been competitive against Cavaliers. There was one buzzer beater there. It was a very close game. They also blew out Cleveland on one occasion. So they've challenged them over the course of the regular season. Now, that's the regular season. Ask the Bulls. That doesn't mean anything. At the same time, you kind of take those factors, and I think they weigh pretty heavily in Miami's favor. You've got players that have been in the NBA Finals, that have been tested before. It just seems like the right combination of things to say, you know what? We're not scared of this moment. We have nothing to lose. We're already playing with our backs against the wall. Again, if they're able to advance past Atlanta, I think they would at least challenge Cleveland. I'm not saying they'll beat them, but I could see the potential of maybe going 6 or 7 games, and that feels like a pretty tough challenge. That seems like something substantial. At the same time, could you say the same thing about Dallas? I don't know. I don't know, that size that we were talking about. AD, again, a proven player in the NBA Finals. If he can continue to play at a high level, I could see some, upset potential there. That seems like I'm almost overstating a little bit, but I could see them again making things a little bit more difficult for a really good, really deep Oklahoma City team that has still feels a little unproven just because of their youth and everything else like that.
I'm glad you brought up the Dallas angle, because to me, of the 4 remaining teams, and yes, they would still need to get past Memphis, right? And so we're putting maybe the wagon ahead of the horse here before these final 2 play-in games are played. But I do really like the matchup for Dallas if they make it into that 8 spot against the Thunder. I think the size would be a problem for OKC. Yes. They spent the better part of the last month and a half of the season really tinkering with that double big lineup and trying to find some cohesion between Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. And while it didn't look, I won't say it looked bad. It didn't look bad. You could tell that there's some clunkiness there. It didn't look great either, right? And so I don't think that that's just a simple plug and play and it'll be fine and they can answer the size questions. No, I think that the Mavericks front line could cause them some problems. And we know that PJ Washington was the ultimate. I mean, he was the kryptonite for that Thunder team last postseason. So you give PJ another shot at the Thunder, you get him in that 8 spot where all the pressure is on OKC. All the pressure is on the Thunder to right the wrongs of the previous postseason. And it's a very different looking Dallas Mavericks team. No Luka Doncic, right? No Kyrie Irving in this iteration. So that puts, I think, an immense amount of pressure on OKC to perform. And OKC is still an incredibly young team. I don't think that you can necessarily use the youth excuse for them because of how dominant they really were this season. I think they've proven themselves to be worthy of being in that contender conversation, right? But it's still the issue of until you do it, until you go out there and show, we're going to take care of business. We're going to sweep the Mavericks. We're going to knock them out. They're not even in the same stratosphere of us as far as teams go in the postseason. Until you do it, there are going to be doubters. There are going to be people that say, well, the Dallas got the better of them last year too. So that would be a matchup that I'd be really curious to see how those 2 coaches would game plan for each other, how impactful the size would be for the Dallas Mavericks with AD, Lively, and Gafford there in the front line. And man, I'll tell you what, if Brandon Williams keeps playing the way that he's been playing to close out the regular season, and if he keeps this up, the play that he had against the Kings for the Mavericks, then they could make a little bit of noise there in the postseason, I think.
Having said all this, it seems probably that Atlanta and Memphis will advance, right? We're both picking Miami and Dallas.
I don't know, man. Memphis is not 100%, right? Ja is definitely not 100%. And I think that the Mavericks front line can hold their own against Memphis. I'm not completely sold on Atlanta. I mean, you're the Heat guy and you're sold on Atlanta over Miami. Decidedly, you're ready to ride off into the sunset.
No. I looked at Atlanta. They fell apart against the Magic. They cut the game, they tied it up or whatever after being blown out early, and then they just wound up falling apart. And Trey kind of just quitting on the team late in them and getting tossed out and complaining about fouls. I don't know what they're playing for. They just seem like a team that just talk about stuck in the treadmill of mediocrity. They kind of feel like that kind of team as well. They make the trade, obviously a couple trades over the course of the regular season. They don't look like they're cohesive at this point. And I don't know that they have a clear identity. Obviously, they're dealing with some injury issues as well. Can Trae Young be the superstar that he thinks he is on one night? We'll find out on Friday.
We will find out on Friday. We'll have a preview episode for you before that. As always, though, we appreciate you for tuning in with us and being here with us at Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go find the Locked On Show for your favorite team. Until then, we will catch you guys on our very next Game Night.